Hi, I am Paige, along with my group members Jordan, Steve, Tyler, and June. Our targeted study for this project is the Ramsey County Public Works Field Management System, Phoenix OPW, which is Phoenix Sequel. OPW is a subsidiary of Dover Corporation, which is a global leader providing solutions for energy, engineering systems, fluids, refrigeration, and food equipment. It's a SQL-based multi-site polling, card and key tracking, reporting, and reconciliation tool. It provides electronic monitoring and sensing solutions to manage field activity. OPW tracks inbound delivery of fuel and distribution of multiple types of fuel to different vehicles via fueling stations. OPW is used by Ramsey County employees, and there's also a few external users that use it. The OPW Phoenix SQL workflow starts with fuel being delivered from an external provider, which then the sensor detects which type and quantity for the respective tanks, such as E85, diesel, and etc. And then the information is recorded and reconciled in the Phoenix SQL. And then the vehicle arrives at the petrol fueling station. Your RFID key card, which is your radio frequency ID, key card and PIN are put in. And then the fuel type and quantity are set for dispensing depending on which vehicle type you have. And then after that, the fuel gets pumped into the vehicle, and then the information is recorded and reconciled in Phoenix SQL. And then after it's recorded and reconciled, the process ends and is then repeated.
All right, for the benefits and the purpose. So the first benefit of the OPW system is it allows those users at Ramsey County to track how much fuel is being consumed and by who, by which trucks and workers. It can be translated into reports for reconciling errors or forecasting and budgeting purposes. So the purpose of this system is to manage the fuel consumption of all of Ramsey County's 1,500 or so vehicles for reporting, budgeting, forecasting, security, as well as cost-saving purposes.
The OPW fuel management system runs based off the MS SQL server and is compatible with browsers such as Internet Explorer 9, 10, and 11, Google's Chrome version 45.0 M or higher, and Mozilla Firefox 41.0 or higher. Two components of the software is the software itself and the data that's being collected and stored. Since the data is stored and hosted on the internal Ramsey County servers, the information collected at the fueling stations need a way to be uploaded to the servers. From there, Verizon Telecommunications Service provides the wireless network that bridges the gap in allowing for the data to be uploaded to the servers. The information is stored on the internal Ramsey County server and to the OPW backup. The software is currently a standalone software as there are no existing Ramsey County software tool to integrate it with. Future integrations and configuration with OPW will be dependent on how many other pieces of software Ramsey County decides to acquire.
All right, guys, so the next couple of slides here, I'm just going to briefly talk about applications hosting and capacity. So the OPW fuel management software is currently hosted on-premise and internally on Ramsey County servers at their Information Services Department. It's an intranet-based software, so there's no outside users. The only users are, Ramsey County truck drivers or any kind of vehicle driver for that matter. And then the fleet director, systems administrator who have access to the software itself, but it's intranet-based. The next bullet point that I'm going to talk about that says it's going to eventually be cloud hosted. It's a bit of a longer talking point, so bear with me here. Ideally, the software is going to be provided as in a SaaS model, and it's going to be cloud hosted. So it's currently on-premise hosted. At one point in time, the software actually was cloud hosted, and that's because it was being implemented in parallel with a different piece of software that Ramsey County procured called an enterprise asset management software. And the two of them were going to integrate together and kind of work in tandem. But what ended up happening is the enterprise asset management software actually failed in its implementation, and the contract was then void, and the OPW fuel management software was on the same contract that hosted in a cloud environment, or stated it was going to be hosted in a cloud environment. So it was a little bit of a turnaround for Ramsey County to pull the OPW fuel management software out of a cloud hosted environment and then be put on their internal hosted servers. So eventually and ideally, it will be provided in a 100% SaaS model fashion, but currently it's on-premise hosted and maintained and managed by the OPW company. There's not necessarily, there are limitations for scalability of the software, but they are so vast that it would be fair to say that there aren't necessarily any limitations on the scalability of the software. And what I mean by that is each of the Petroven fueling stations can accommodate roughly 1,000 key fobs. And there are several Petroven fueling stations per fueling island. And then to take it even a step further, there are multiple fueling islands all around Ramsey County. So I think by my current estimates, it can accommodate roughly 24,000 individual key fobs. So it's not necessarily the software that's limiting the capacity that it can function in. It's more so limited by the size of the fuel storage tanks that Ramsey County owns, right? So it's a very scalable software. Many users can be input into the system and then utilize it on a daily basis many times over. And then to take it even a step further, each individual Petroven fueling station temporarily stores all the information that it gathers on an internal hard drive, which is then uploaded via Verizon Telecommunications Network to the Ramsey County servers, and then it's stored in the SQL database. And just kind of on an interesting note, we've added the hardware requirements on the right-hand side of the slide that you see here. I'm not going to read over those because it's kind of a bunch of tech jargon, but if you are curious, those are the minimum spec requirements needed to run the OPW fuel software. So the second slide, I'm just going to briefly talk about the maintenance activities and the performance monitoring done by the software itself. But essentially what makes this software so great is, it's monitoring a very simple workflow, right? So, drivers come in, they fuel their vehicles, the amounts and the types are all reconciled, and then that data can be exported and viewed by other users or I guess management in order to make their workflows more efficient and effective, save some money in the long run. But because the software is so simple, it also means that the maintenance, not in all cases, but in this case, the maintenance is actually pretty simple as well. And none of the maintenance is handled by Ramsey County Information Services. A majority, if not all of it, is handled by OPW themselves. So in the service contract agreement, OPW provides one update per year where the software is taken down for a brief amount of time. A new update is pushed to Ramsey County by OPW and then implemented. Obviously, it's tested in an environment before it goes live, but usually these updates are fairly small, seeing as how the software is pretty robust in its own right. One interesting thing to mention, though, is that all of the information that the Petroven fueling stations and the software collects is actually also pushed back to OPW, and they host their own servers where they collect all the information just in case. It's kind of like a failover purpose, right? So just in case Ramsey County servers fail, their backups fail, well, Ramsey County can go to OPW and say, hey, we've lost all of our information. Can you provide us with all the information that you've collected? And they'll do that, which is very convenient. These updates are also pushed to all. It's the same contract service agreement for a majority of all Phoenix SQL users. So they're guaranteed one update a year, and then any kind of small hot fixes or patches. But that rarely happens with this software. Another couple important things to mention is that log files exist that keep track of every transaction, authentication into the software, and access by any of the drivers. So these kind of audit trails are available just in case things are reconciled incorrectly, or if you want to view, I guess, unauthorized access to the software somehow, some way. But the software does have the ability to kind of monitor who's coming in, who's going out, any changes, and so on and so forth. in any facet of the software in its own right. So it can be monitored extensively.
Tracking components are done through the use of RFID radio frequency scans, which are scanned, and key fobs are swiped on the fuel stations, which transmits information on the fuel type and how much fuel is being used for each vehicle. Any additional information, such as mileage, is also tracked and recorded at the same time. Establishing needs and requirements go through a process of having a formal needs assessment processed by a third party. The specific need for the fuel management system was promoted by the director of Ramsey County's fleet division, and the requirements going into this project were gathered from the fleet departments involving the project manager and one or more business analysts. Stakeholders' needs and requirements are documented to assist in assessing the current and future evaluations of the project. Parties involved in the project overview and discussions are done by the fleet department. Once reviews are complete, they are then handed over to the core team to sign off on the requirements, which then gets delivered to the steering committee to approve the project. The champions of the project are the director of Ramsey County's fleet and the public works department.
All right, the systems development process. So Ramsey County, as a government agency, must follow very strict Minnesota legislature and statutes before they can obtain the OPW system. So in order to obtain it, they have to send out a request for a proposal, and they must do this in order to offer equal opportunity to all vendors. Ramsey County only has to adhere to these laws beginning at 25,000. So before that, they do not have to do this. And then that ends at 100,000. So basically, the RPF is basically the vendor submits that as a bid, and then those RPFs are evaluated by Ramsey County based on their requirement needs, and they are scored appropriately.
Applications implementation managed by several parties: OPW, Verizon representative, project manager, functional lead, enterprise asset management system manager. Systems testing done by OPW, implementation team, and information service team. Cut over to application was accomplished on per week basis with petrol van hardware. OPW full management software, once the software has been implemented and running in a live setting, everything that the product claimed to do was being done. Ramsey County's project manager align or observe the best possible implementation strategy along with the correct vendor so that the project is meeting the needs of the project owners.
All right, the assessment and recommendations, both the strategic and economic benefits. So Ramsey County's fuel management software will allow their data to be captured in real time right at the pump. So the precise data will be for billing, as well as it allows for less fueling errors. We can save on fuel consumption with the management system. So the tracking of fuel consumption will allow Ramsey County to see where their funds are being allocated, as well as it exploits where adjustments may need to be made.
Assessment and recommendations. Project success. The OPW full software is all functioning without any issues and performing their related tasks appropriately. Audits of the software were done on the software in addition to the fueling station throughout the implementation and installment. Audits are also done during the testing phase of the software, and everything was running up to standard, which is concluded that the live deployment of the software will be a success. Success is also gauged by observing whether something is performing up to a predetermined standard. All our team members think implementation of the OPW fuel management system software a success. Data sources, software, OPW fuel management software. Software can be downloaded or hard copy can be provided and then installed. The software is listed as being hosted on a server class network PC. Website. Website is one of the most valuable tools that businesses can engage with the customer, ultimately make their life easier. Phone. Since we can meet employees in person, would it interview employees through the phone? Human resources. They are our employee at Ranch County. These employees have a handful of experience that they can provide us information we need. Textbook. Textbook will be considered as secondary source since it describes and interprets about the businesses and a lot of examples.
This is our final slide, and we thought it to be valuable to talk about 4 different things that we've learned from myself, Jordan, in addition to the remaining people that we spoke with at Ramsey County that had hands-on experience with the software. And they're kind of more broad. They don't necessarily have to do with the OPW fuel management software, but they have to do with the procurement or development and implementation of a project, or in this case, a software. But number one being importance of having owners or champions of projects that guide and hold members and vendors accountable. People at Ramsey County stated the importance of having 1 or 2 people to go to that help not divert away from the original plan and make changes on the fly. The second one being aligning all involved stakeholders, where communication and transparency between all parties involved is key. It's very paramount. So basically making sure that everybody's on the same page and making sure that everybody has the exact same understanding of what the project is, what the process is, and sticking to that plan. The third thing that we learned is that organizing and orchestrating change management to accommodate large changes that it will divert people from routine habits is also very important. When big changes come into an organization and that organization has been doing the same thing, or a few people in that organization have been doing the same thing for, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, it's actually pretty intense and or scary for them to do something completely different. So having one person or a group of people there to help accommodate those changes and teach people, train people, talk to people, evaluate what the best way is to make those changes can greatly increase the success of an implementation or a project. And then the last note here is just being able to gather clear and concise requirements and making sure not to, divert away from those clear and concise requirements after a project has begun, because that can also, throw a wrench in the spokes, so to speak, of whether a project will succeed or fail. But making sure that everybody, again, is following transparency, having clear, concise requirements, voicing those requirements in a manner that is able to be understood by anybody that needs to know the requirements is hugely important as well. So that's the end of our presentation, and we want to thank you very much for listening, and we look forward to checking out everybody else's presentations as well. Thanks, guys.